in the halls of injustice. Um, like this is I mean, speaking of anti-war, rehearsal for Armageddon underway as NATO and Russia hold nuclear exercises. All nuclear exercises imply willingness to mass murder civilians, wipe out entire cities, and risk all-out nuclear war, said ICANN. They also risk accidents and escalation and will legitimize Russia's dangerous nuclear rhetoric. I mean, why? Because ICANN, right? Like, that's partly. So this is Brett Wilkins from Common Dreams.
My favorite, one of our favorite.
Yep, he does good stuff. He tries to leave what people have as their own words usually. So as NATO on Monday began its annual rehearsal for nuclear war in Europe and Russia prepared to conduct its own nuclear drill amid Cold War-like tensions inflamed by the invasion of Ukraine, peace advocates underscored the imperative for de-escalation in order to avert catastrophe. So this is from ICANN, right? If I can get this squared. Yep. All nuclear exercises imply willingness to mass murder civilians, wipe out entire cities, and risk all-out nuclear war. The international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, otherwise known as ICANN, warned ahead of the NATO drill. They also risk accidents and escalation and will legitimize Russia's dangerous nuclear rhetoric. Which, what about our dangerous nuclear rhetoric? Which, I'm sure somebody will get into soon. NATO said the exercise operation named Steadfast Noon involves up to 60 warplanes from 14 members of the alliance and is being carried out from Klein Brogel Air Base in northeastern Belgium. So, the U.S. military stockpiles dozens of B-6112 tactical nuclear warheads at Klein Brogel, each up to 30 times as powerful as the atomic bomb that the United States dropped on Hiroshima, Japan in 1945, killing over 100,000 people. So, we're in, where's that Klein Brogel base at, Colin? Do you remember? Belgium?
Yeah.
So how far away do you think Belgium is from Russia?
Pretty far.
Kind of. I mean, it's on the other side of Germany. Well,
yeah. I mean, Belgium is basically on the North Sea.
Yeah.
On the west, and Russia is basically on the other side of Europe. So
yeah,
quite a distance.
Yeah, but for a plane, not that far.
No.
So how many dozens, they say, tactical nuclear warheads an airplane distance away, so Peter Crenau says, why, oh dear God, why is NATO holding an exercise for U.S. B-52 bombers and F-16 fighters to simulate dropping atomic bombs over Europe when we need peace, not threats? U.S. rehearses dropping nuclear bombs in Europe, which is the article that he's quoting. And this is the article. According to Belgium's VRT News, Belgian F-16 pilots will train how to drop the bombs, while ground crews will practice transporting the weapons from underground bunkers and loading them on warplanes. U.S. B-52 bombers based at Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota will also fly to Europe to participate in the drill, which will take place over Belgium, the North Sea, and the United Kingdom, according to NATO. Russia has been informed of the exercise, which is scheduled to last until October 30th. While NATO spokesperson Ona Lungescu explained that Steadfast Noon helps ensure that the alliance's nuclear deterrent remains safe, secure, and effective. Ludo Debrabander of the Belgian peace group VRED, VCW, told VRT News that in a nuclear escalation, military bases equipped with nuclear weapons like Klein-Brogel form the first potential targets. They don't make us safer. So here's ICANN at a time when the world is outraged by Russia's unacceptable nuclear threats. NATO should not follow suit and practice using weapons of mass destruction. Another nuclear-related exercise was canceled in March, most likely to avoid the risk of escalation. So ICANN's asking them for them to cancel this, essentially. So they continue, we're closer to nuclear war than we have been since the Cuban Missile Crisis, and no one can afford further escalation. All governments must condemn all nuclear threats and cease military preparations which simulate the use of nuclear weapons. I definitely agree on that one. So earlier this month, U.S. President Joe Biden responded to repeated threats by Russian Vladimir Putin to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine by warning that even the use of tactical nukes was likely to end up with Armageddon. Most recently, Biden called Putin a rational actor who has miscalculated significantly by launching a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said during a press conference last week that Russia knows that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. Russian forces are expected to carry out their own annual large-scale nuclear exercise called Grom, or Thunder, along Russia's northwestern coast in the coming days or weeks, its second of the year. So, and this is like their, like, plan, essentially, right? Which simulates going over the North Pole to us, I imagine.
Yeah, actually is the North Pole.
Yeah. So, which, like, I can't blame them if we're going to practice. They might as well practice, I guess, right? So, this is nuclear dick measuring at its finest.
Right.
Like, so white drills like Steadfast Noon and Grom don't involve live nuclear warheads. They do have the potential for catastrophic escalation. In November 1983, an extremely tense period of the Cold War, Soviet military officials initially mistook NATO's Able Archer 83 war game for a possible preemptive strike and prepared their own nuclear missiles for launch. It was a vicious circle, wrote Francine Unima for Smithsonian Magazine. The Soviets refused to believe the Americans were bluffing. The Americans, meanwhile, suspected the Soviets were bluffing about not thinking the Americans were bluffing. Where's my soundboard when I need it? We're fucked.
Basically, yeah.
Like, ugh.
That was another meeting, yeah, right?
I mean, Elon Musk.
Also, chat, let us know what sound clips we should add to the soundboard too.
Yeah.
Just as an aside.
We're fucked.
There we
go. But our old friend, Twitter owner hopeful Elon Musk, practice makes perfect is what he's replying. So nice. And this is Rollin reading that Able Archer 83 should be read by everyone who wants to weigh in on these exercises. So yeah, that's them talking about we almost caused nuclear war with a war game that I just read.
Yeah.
So Hans M. Christensen, a nuclear weapons expert with the Federation of American Scientists, warned that NATO and Russia holding nuclear exercises during what many observe call a proxy war between them is inherently perilous. It's a textbook example of what happens in a tense crisis where both sides escalate to demonstrate that they are serious about deterring each other, but therefore can't de-escalate because it would make them look weak. He wrote, ICANN tweeted Friday that we're closer to nuclear war than we have been since the Cuban Missile Crisis, and no one can afford further escalation. all governments must condemn all nuclear threats and cease military preparations which simulate the use of nuclear weapons. In a Common Dreams opinion piece marking the 60th anniversary of the Cuban Missile Crisis, during which the world came as close as it ever has to a major nuclear war, Robert Dodge of Physicians for Social Responsibility wrote that nuclear weapons remain the greatest real and present danger to our future. Every day that these weapons exist, our future and that of all subsequent generations is threatened, Dodge continued. We are here this moment not due to the strength of our militaries, nuclear weapons, or the genius of our leaders. We are here through the graces of sheer luck. Sooner or later, our luck will run out. It is time that Americans and citizens around the world take to the streets and voting booths demanding there be no nuclear response in Ukraine, a negotiated settlement now, and the abolition of all nuclear weapons, he added. Thoughts, Colin?
So in a nutshell, this is a big game of chicken at our expense.
Yep.
That's what this reminds me of. So, America is obviously fearing the worst and are preparing. Russia is also preparing for the worst and are preparing. And all the working class in the middle of this, as Missy will say, are fucked.
Ooh, we're fucked.
Yes, basically. So that's why I took out of this article is, I don't want people to think that I or we within the network are like Russian sympathizers. Like, we hate Putin too. He's a capitalist too, but, but again, as I said in the last segment, where are the calls for peace? Where are the calls for anti-war?
Well, the calls for peace have been from Russia, and they were turned down.
Right.
Essentially.
Right. So it's like the fact that this reminds me of Ukraine all over again. The initial idea that we thought we were in the right, to go over after 9/11, and then ended up being hoodwinked into the media and the corporations basically indoctrinated to think to us that it was okay, and then we're dealing with the aftermath of that now, and people online are basically saying this has to happen, and I'm like, why? We didn't learn as recently as 20 years ago regarding Ukraine. So it's just as you said, who has the biggest dick, basically, and show it off. And
this is Dr. Strangelove.
Right.
That's it's
who has the bigger nukes, who has the bigger tanks, who has the bigger guns, and
who's willing to waste more resources.
Right.
Yeah.
And we know the answer to that, but but
they might find out that that's a losing strategy.
Right.
So I just hope people keep their fucking little grubby fingers off the red button. Please fucking don't do that shit.
Well, I can actually trust Putin more that he won't do anything compared to Biden will, honestly. Because Trump is basically saying, we're going for it. Fuck that, we're going for it. So I feel like Putin is a little more sympathetic and being I don't want to do anything, but I will if you push me to.
Speaking of Donald Trump,